Hey, welcome back to the fifth and final episode of the Track from Scratch. Today we're mixing using some of the Ableton stock effects that come with Ableton to get you a pretty decent master if you are on a budget or if you don't have any of these extra plugins, just everything within Ableton, of course, if you have Ableton. So hopefully this helps you out, and let's get into it. So for me, mixing is one of the things that I either look forward to a lot or do not look forward to at all. And there's really no in between when it comes to mixing. Obviously, it's something you have to do, and I like to do it as I go. So if you've been paying attention and watching the whole series, you can see that I've been listening or adjusting little things here and there. So like this one is adjusted quite a bit. You know, our basses are a little bit leveled, but definitely something that we have to go through and change. And then our synths, you can see that this is at 10.5, this is at 13. So we're just making subtle mixing adjustments as we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and listen to the whole thing, and then we'll go through and kind of pick out what we think is too loud, what we think is too quiet, and we'll go through and we'll mix some things. So I just recently listened to this track, but what I'm going to do right off the gate is I am going to lower these bass group right over here, and that way when they come in they are a little bit less loud, because I noticed that they were a little bit too loud the time before. So let's go ahead and listen through the track, and then we'll start making adjustments. So since we've been mixing as we are going, there aren't really too many things that stick out to me. Granted, I am listening on headphones, so my hearing is a little bit askewed because of that. I'm not used to mixing on headphones. However, I do notice that we do need to fix a lot of this drop. So I'm going to go ahead and solo the bass group and see what we can do. I'm going to go ahead and also solo it with the sub bass, and all I'm doing here is just soloing both of these and then just listening back and figuring out what frequencies I need to take away from this sub to make it sound a little bit less muddy. You can also click this little headphone here and pan and see what frequencies are annoying. It is missing a bit of high end, I think, so maybe an overdrive. And then after the fact, I'll just go ahead and throw the saturator. I do notice that that snare is pretty loud as well. Turn that down a little bit more. This one also needs a fair amount of EQ. And in this one, we're getting kind of a high end frequency that is pretty unpleasant. So let's go ahead and take down these high ends a little bit, just because we have this extra layer on here that's providing a lot of the high end. And let's see what that sounds like. So that definitely sounds a lot better. Other than that, maybe some more mixing, kind of splitting into groups. So what I do is I have a pre-made mix chain, and all I do here is, for this I specifically have limiters. You can do this with saturators. In fact, that works a little bit better, but limiters might be a little bit of an easier way to approach this as a beginner. And all you can do here is, for example, in this group 1, I put everything besides the bass here. In this group 2, I put the bass. In this group 3, it's basically just group 1 and group 2 going into it to limit it even harder. That way when I master it, I have a kind of a pretty hard ceiling to go off of. And then this pre-master gets every vocal or any drum samples besides the hats or the top loops. And then this just goes straight to the master, and then we do some mastering with ozone typically. However, you can also throw in some saturator, some, you know, multi-band compression, things like that if you do not have ozone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start routing things. So what I'm going to do is click this little button here. I'm going to take my drums to the pre-master. I'm going to take my tops to the group 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and just minimize these as I go. My synths are also going to go to group 1. My bass is going to go to group 2. That way the bass just has its own kind of space. Group 1 is going to be my effects as well. Our Vox are going to go to the pre-master. That's just so they sit on top of everything else, since the Vox is kind of something that you can sing along to. You can't really sing along to, you know, kicks and drums and whatnot. And then our other basses are also going to go to group 2, and then that's our mix chain. So what you can do here is, in your group 1, since nothing here should have sub bass, you can throw an EQ on there. Go ahead and put that before the limiter, and then this is how everything sounds like now. So you can see it sounds a little bit cleaner. You can tell that it's kind of just limiting it right at this spot right here. We have the master turned down so that the music isn't clipping over the screen recording. However, it's really just clipping at that kind of -4 decibels here. We can see we're at -6, so these limiters are making a difference. We can see if we go into the first part. That everything, all the low ends are kind of EQ'd out. The bass is taking up all the space under 200 Hertz, so it makes for a good mix. Now what we can do here is, either if you don't have ozone or you just need a kind of a quick and dirty master, they have mastering effect racks in here. So if we go in here, we can go to mixing and mastering, and these are pretty easy to kind of just throw something on here and get a pretty good mix or a pretty decent mix, especially if you're beginning and you can kind of learn the ropes as you're going along. But we can grab this master full chain, throw this on here. I'm going to go ahead and take that off this limiter. And then what I do as well is, if you search Munson on YouTube, you can find a Munson EQ curve. This is what it usually works at, and all that it looks like is this kind of curve. And what you can do is you can adjust the Q here to kind of siphon it down or minimize the frequencies that this is adjusting. But what I do is I actually have one that's modified a little bit from the original, and it looks, instead of looking like this, it looks like this, and that's just taking out some harsh frequencies. That way you can play the music a little bit louder without hurting your ears. So it takes out these frequencies. You can't really hear it audibly, but it does make a difference, because I find myself turning up my music louder and being able to kind of withstand it without it hurting my ears. So without the master chain, this is what it sounds like. And with the master chain, you can hear just automatically this is giving it a little bit of gain. So I don't think we need the bass gain. If anything, the high gain is okay just for a little bit of excitement. Pardon pardon my dog. And then we have some stereo enhancement here, some compression, how much the compression is engaged, and then the limiter. So we'll just dial in these kind of to your liking and see what sounds good. So now if we look back at our volume, we can see we're at 4.3, which is 0.3 decibels under 0 if we take off this, which is exactly where we want to be. So pretty dirty, but you can go in here and you can mix and figure out what's going to sound good. If you actually open these up, you can see exactly what it's doing, and you can learn that way to kind of see. So for example, in this mid drive, they have an EQ here with a high-end bump. We have the glue compression, some overdrive utility. That's going to be the width, which they have it set to the stereo mode, which is on the mid side, and then you can kind of adjust that. If we look at the stereo enhance, that's exactly what that's going to adjust. But pretty cool. And you can learn backwards of how mastering works and how Ableton, you know, the Ableton people go through and they make these mastering chains. But that's a really dirty mix and something easy to kind of just drag and drop. It's free, of course. It comes with your Ableton, and you can kind of dial it in and see what sounds good from that point. And it is a lot less horsepower that it's taking from your CPU, so it's much easier to mix that way than with Ozone, and there's no delay and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and let the rest of the track play. Thank you so much for watching this. If this helped you at all, leave a comment below. If you have any questions, leave those below as well. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.